Let's set over the details now. And of course, we are live on X Spaces, on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course on myjoyonline.com for those who are watching us beyond Ghana. Now, President John Mahama has assured public sector workers that if the economy recovers, it will ensure higher remuneration for them in the coming year. Now, President Mahama attended the National Tripartite Committee meeting at the Ministry of Labour, Jobs and Employment, where the government announced a 10% increase in base pay for public sector workers effective January. Additionally, the daily minimum wage has risen by 10% to 19 cedis, 97 pesos effective March 1. We'll hear from the president shortly, but here is the Minister of Labour, Jobs and Employment, Dr. Rashid Pelpo, directing establishment to adjust their payroll to reflect the new minimum wage, else risk sanction.
Of the Labour Act 2003, Act 651, the National Tripartite Committee concluded negotiations on the determination of the 2025 national daily minimum wage at a meeting held on Thursday, 20th February 2025 in Accra. In determining the 2025 minimum wage, the National Tripartite Committee took into account the current economic challenges, cost of living, stability of businesses, and desirability of attaining higher level of employment as follows. An increase in the national daily minimum wage by 10% over the 2024 national daily minimum wage, which translates into a new national daily minimum wage of 19.97 Ghana cedis. The effective date for the implementation of the 2025 minimum wage shall be 1st of March 2025. All establishments, institutions, or organizations whose daily minimum wages are below the new rate should adjust accordingly. 5. Any establishment, institutions, or organizations that flouts the 2025 national daily minimum wage shall be sanctioned in accordance with the law. The National Tripartite Committee recommends that the 2025 national daily minimum wage should be tax exempt.
Well, President John Mahama gave us a glimpse into the kind of economy he inherited in January and displayed higher minimum wage remuneration for public sector workers in the coming years once the economy bounces back. He also stressed the need to establish an independent emolument committee to determine the income of public sector workers.
You know, we are your natural allies, and we've worked together for many years. One thing that is a cardinal principle for us is to tell the truth at all times. We all knew the economy was in crisis, but some of the things I'm discovering myself, it's been a criminal handling of our economy. And Ghana is a crime scene, actually, because how a government can have been so reckless, I cannot understand. But we're faced with a reality, and our options are very few. We can behave like the ostrich and hide our heads in the sand and let the economy crash. But then what effect would it have on Ghanaian households and everybody? And so I've told him, I said, cut expenditure as much as you like. Even we ourselves in Office of Government Machinery, cut as much of our budget as you like, because we all must make those sacrifices. A certain distrust of the political class has arisen, because it's like when everybody else is tightening their belts, the political class is loosening its belts. But I want to assure you that we're all going to tighten our belts, and there will be no wasteful expenditure. It is said that we create and share. And so let's start cooking the meal now so that we can share when we have created. But right now, the meal is not only insufficient, the cooking pot is even leaking. And so I'll just appeal to you that let's temper our demands for this year. And once we get out of the woods, we've set good targets to bring inflation down so that the cost of everything will come down. We've set targets to grow the economy, to make things better. And when the cake is big, then it's bigger, we'll share bigger. We are proposing an independent emoluments committee that would set the incomes for everybody from the president right down to the ordinary laborer. We're prepared to walk this journey with you, but I just appeal to you that let's reach agreement on this one so that we use this year as the year of correction. And then after we've corrected, we'll see how the economy continues to go. Once the economy moves in the direction that we are all hoping for, we all, if we have an independent emoluments committee, maybe if you suggest 35%, I'll support you because it will affect my pay too.
Right, so from eating the meat to the bone to now leaking pot. Now that is the state of the Ghanaian economy. But this is not the first time we are witnessing an increment in the minimum wage or the base pay. So we want to explore what the increment in the national minimum wage means for the average Ghanaians, especially because the National Tripartite Committee has recommended that the 2025 daily minimum wage be tax exempt. What does that mean? Joining me in the studio for that exploration is Kofi Ajay from our Research and Data Department. So Kofi, you've got what, from 2012 to 2025?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I've heard the president says that we now have, the pot is even leaking.
Yes.
The last time he made some reference to the economy was the fact that we had eaten the meat to the bone. Now, a leaking pot means that very soon everything will run out.
Well, Elton, if you gauge the sentiment of the president or his mood, you realize that he knows what's at stake. Because if you analyze the country's expenditure for this year, what you realize is that compensation to employees alone is supposed to take some 36% of the expected revenue.
And that has come down. It used to be around 45 to 50%.
Yeah, it's because of the IMF program. In fact, even if you compare it to tax revenue, it becomes worse because now you'll be venturing into 50% of tax revenue.
Right.
Now I've been trying to get some clarity in terms of the minimum wage we see on the smart wall and as to whether it should be taxed. The clarity I'm getting is that the barest minimum, in terms of the minimum of the minimum wage should not be taxed. So, in fact, if you look at the current minimum wage of 19 cedis, 97 pesos, if you do the math, it means that a worker that is being paid that minimum wage should be earning, as the lowest should be somewhere 600 cedis.
600 Ghana cedis
exactly a month. That means that 600 cedis, if you are paying 600 cedis to that person, it should not be taxed. But once it is stepped up and that person is earning more than that, then it begins to attract taxes.
What that also means that no worker in Ghana should be paid less than the minimum
less
wage.
than 600 or 599, roughly 600 cedis should not be paid less than that. What we've been tracking is that you can see how the upward movement in terms of the minimum wage has moved from 4 cedis, 48 pesos in 2012 to now 19 cedis, 97 pesos. There is some sort of positive correlation between the minimum wage and the dollar to the cedi.
Right.
What usually we see is that the minimum wage is usually around $1. And when it begins to go below the dollar, it's always critical.
Right.
But this year, even though the increment is 10%, what we see is that if you compare this 19 cedis, 97 pesos to the current dollar to cedi rate, which is around 15 cedis, 50 pesos, you can see that the gap is widening. So some positive news there. But you may look at it on the nominal values, but in terms of percentage-wise, what has been the story? The story is that...
if you can just go back
of course,
for just a second. I mean, if you look at it from the trajectory from 2012 up onto 2025, I don't know why the increment has always been 1 cedi. The only time it went up was between 2023 and 2024, where it jumped from 14 cedis to 18 cedis. But it's always been 1 cedi.
So it's always been that, because you only see an outlier when you see the country in a very difficult situation. That is when labor will demand more. When you see inflation going up. In 2022, we saw inflation skyrocketing to as high as 54%. So if they are coming to the negotiation table, they'll definitely come with a bigger, demand. Remember that last year, for instance, around this same time, we were talking about the 22% minimum wage and base pay increment. What Labour went to the negotiation table with was somewhere 60%. They ended up getting some 22%. This year, we've not seen some big fuss around the whole 10%. It means that Labour possibly feels that they are getting closer to what they may have wanted. And looking at how the president spoke, they may be aware that this is a turnaround time for the country. And he said that, look, let's start from this point. When things begin to get better, you may get what you may be demanding. But in terms of percentage change, Elton, and if you look at it from maybe 2015 to 2022, you can see that the average is usually around, let's say, 10% a year. Their only outliers was in 2013, definitely when a new government comes to power. 2020 when we had COVID, and you can see that it went back to the normal level of, between 6 to 10%. Then 2024 became the outlier in this period under review, where we saw the base pay go up by some 22%. And now we are talking about 10%. Not just this. I mean, the bigger problem has to do with that projected 73 billion compensation of employees that government must pay this year. When minimum wage and base pay goes up, it's not just about what government is paying to the workers, but their social contribution as well. And now that we are under an IMF program, definitely it means that government has also gone into conclave with the fund. The fund were in town somewhere 2 weeks ago, right? They just left, I think a week ago or so. So they may be aware some of these things, there can be a unilateral decision. Government must get the buy-in of the fund. It must fit within the current framework that we have under the IMF program. So definitely the president was right when he said that, look, the situation doesn't look good at the moment, because usually, especially the first quarter, government will have to borrow to pay workers. And we all know how there is no local bond market at the moment. The only market function at the moment is the Treasury bill. If you decide to go to the external, the IMF has placed a borrowing cap of $250 million on that. So it's interesting to see how government will maneuver around this.
Just some two questions before I let you go. So you are saying that compensation for this year is around 70 is
projected around 73 billion Ghana cedis.
And that is in terms of percentage to
that's about
overall revenue generation.
That's about 35% of the projected revenue.
We do not know how much government is projected to collect in the year of 2025, because the budget has yet to come.
I mean, but they give a sense in the IMF program. The last review that was done in December 2024. Remember that currently we are under the fund program. So even the budgets, there's already a framework that government will just have to fill in. The projected revenue is somewhere around 209 billion Ghana cedis. And you are going to spend 73 billion
compensation. Do you know how much of that money will go to service interest on loans?
Interest on loans, unfortunately, is around 142. No, I think interest on loans, if you add it to the debt servicing this year is around 142 billion Ghana cedis. So just compare
if you add the 72 billion Ghana cedis to it, that we are looking at almost 200.
That's more.
So that's like almost compensation and interest taking
away the entire projected revenue.
So where is the room to undertake all the massive development and all the commitment that government have to undertake?
I mean, that really puts pressure on the local capital space, where T-bills and all of that. And when this happens, it means that government would always and all the time have to start coming to the T-bill market. And you cannot reduce the rate, because once you reduce the rate, it no longer becomes attractive for people to borrow to government. And once the rate is also high, it keeps the private person away. So it's an interesting situation at the moment, where because government still needs money from the Treasury bill market, they have to keep a rate to attract investors. There are private persons who also want to get into this space. They want to make sure, they want to wake up one day and hear that interest on loans is around 19% or 18%. But because of governments, wanting to finance that big deficits, they always would have to go to the treasury bill market because the local bond market is no longer there. And the IMF is projecting that government should start or gradually start issuing domestic bonds in the next quarter, which is just about 2 months away, right? So that's the situation at the moment for the country.
Thank you so much for coming through. But the man who is privy to the figures, in fact, one of them, and he's also in a very, unique position in terms of determining how much as a worker you should earn. Joining me in the studio is the Chief Executive Officer of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, Benjamin Arthur. Mr. Arthur, good afternoon and welcome to the Pulse.
Good afternoon.
So I saw you at the news conference with the Labour Minister and, of course, President John Mahama. First of all, when the President makes the point that we are not in a very good place in terms of our economy and the revenue that comes in, or what we are saddled with right now, what is the message here?
Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to greet our viewers. I do not think I could paint the picture better than what the President did. But for us at the table, we were not just looking at cost of living. We were also looking at the economic circumstances which the Sector Minister for Employment, together with the Minister for Finance, had adequately explained. So when we fix wages, it's not just the cost of living. We must, sometimes when we discuss it in the media space, we forget that government plays a lead role when it comes to employment. So whatever we do in the public sector has a ripple effect on the private sector. So if you come into government with the aim that you want to generate jobs, you want job opportunities for the teeming youth who happen to not get opportunities to be employed, and you are very mindful of that, you equally be mindful of how you fix wages. The national minimum wage is a minimum wage floor. When we are fixing it, I'm a member of the tripartite committee. So I'll speak briefly on that. When we fix it, we are very mindful that you don't fix the wages in such a way that the businesses that will provide opportunities for labor to be employed will equally be collapsed. So you have to be very mindful of their circumstances. And they are not operating in isolation. They operate under the economic environment prevailing. So definitely you have to be very mindful of that. We're equally mindful of sustainability. That where are you going to raise the revenue? So it's not as if I'm looking at merely transportation costs. I'm just looking at what it takes for me to feed myself and my family. You must equally be concerned as to how that business could be sustained for you to continue to draw your rewards per exchange of your skills. So that is also very key. So you don't fix minimum wages because it pleases one party to say that give me 50, 30, whatever percentage. So we must also come to understand that the mechanism for determining the national minimum wage and any other wage in public sector dwells on negotiations. So once you hear a certain percentage, what it means is that the stakeholders, the parties,
all came to that conclusion. I'll come back to ask what went into coming to that figure of 10%. But let me first ask you, so in practical terms, and for somebody who is watching right now, probably jubilating, every worker who earns a salary or some wages at the end of every month should see a 10% increment. Is that what it means? Or this is practically for the public sector for now, and the private is, they have the room to decide as to whether to go with it, because this is just the basic.
Okay, for you are speaking of the minimum wage. But I'm for the base pay. Fair wages is set up for public sector pay. Not private. The minimum wage is of uniform application. To public and private sector. What it means that government is not able to fix the minimum base pay that will be below the minimum wage. So that is a guiding principle. But in the public sector, what we do for the base pay will not dictate
the minimum
to those in the private sector. I hope you get it.
I get it.
We cannot dictate to the private sector as what exactly they do. But by law, when there's a minimum wage, determined, you cannot go below that.
Exactly.
That is where the minimum wage stops. But for
basically,
us,
nobody should go below what has been established or set by
once it's set,
the committee.
it's law. When you read the Labour Act, once the minimum wage is set, it's law. It's binding on all of us. And that's how come government is not able to fix the lowest base pay below the minimum wage. So oftentimes, you realize that we will first finish with the minimum wage for it to be a guide for the base pay negotiations. And that is what has happened this year as well.
But you know that, I mean, in this country, there are so many millions of people who are paid way below what is established by law.
For a day.
Yes.
What it means that the enforcement needs to be wide.
Exactly. There are people who are paid 300 Ghana cedis, 200 Ghana cedis a month. Sometimes even getting the money is difficult, even though they are aware that this is what has been said by law, but they operate below it. That is
another forum for discussion. But for us to address this, there is an entity under the Labour Ministry called Labour Department. And I'm sure when they go for inspections, they are careful to do so. But sensitization is very key in this matter.
Tell us the pillars that were considered in arriving at the percentage.
For the national minimum wage, because it's under the tripartite, I wouldn't want to dwell so much.
But you are a member?
Yes, I'm a member, but I'm not the official spokesperson. But the chair is the secretary minister. I'm the CEO of Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. So if you do not mind, maybe we may have to shift the conversation from the national daily minimum wage
to the base pay.
To the base pay.
Okay, let's do that.
Where I have my mandate.
Let's do that then.
Okay, thank you. Normally when you hear the 10% that government has increased wages by 10%, it is not exactly the case. It's much more than that. Simply because government is equally, mandated to pay the 13.5% social security contributions. So the increase that we have given, there's an additional amount that government must find and add. So for every 10 Ghana cedis or 100 Ghana cedis that we give, we are giving 13.5 Ghana cedis, right. 13.5 Ghana cedis. I just gave you this practical example so that you appreciate. So if government says that I'm increasing your 1,000 Ghana cedis by 10%, what it means is that the 100 Ghana cedis is coming to add. In addition to that, government is going to find an additional fund of 13.5% to add to the 100 so that your social contribution will be paid. It does not also end there. There are some allowances that are annexed or indexed to the base pay. So as soon as the base pay goes up by 10%, those allowances that are indexed to the base
are also affected.
So to government, there is that extra, commitment.
And that obviously is good news for public sector workers.
So definitely. So when you hear the 10%, it's not just a mere 10%. It's much more than that because this is only the base. But the allowances that are indexed to the base equally will receive their, increases.
Has the numbers been worked out to say that because of this increase, this is how much pressure of this, how much is added to the
wage bill?
Exactly.
Oh, definitely. Without doing this, the finance minister could not come and make a commitment on behalf of government that government is ready to spend this much in public sector wage bill management or in terms of payroll issues. Obviously, if you have not done that, you cannot come out.
You cannot agree on that.
You want to do
so Mr. Atta, how much of burden is this imposing on the public purse?
We are looking at over 4 billion.
4 billion Ghana cedis.
Yes, just for the 10% on the base. We're looking at 4 billion. You see, we've gotten to a point where we must accept that when I say we, in government and our public sector workers, we must accept the challenge that we cannot continue, borrowing to pay public sector workers. So the challenge was thrown to all of us. His Excellency, for the first time in the history of base pay, the president of the land showed up to come and, give some backing, explain to organized labor and our good selves as to what the situation is. Of course, we have also had the presence of the finance minister at all the meetings, and these were adequately expressed. Organized labor understood that there is a need for us to do burden sharing in order to move forward as a country. You know, when you increase wage bill and you're also borrowing to pay, what it means is that you are going to look for more money. So why must we look for more money when our colleagues who are receiving the money can also help us lessen the burden? And that is what organized labor has demonstrated today, that they are with us. We need to build a country together.
And
so
I must say that
it's a consensus.
Yes, and I must also add that this obviously will go down as perhaps one of few meetings at the tripartite committee that we didn't see so much disagreement, especially in the public space. This is the Public Services Joint Standing Negotiating Committee, not the tripartite. Right. Tripartite is for minimum wage. This one is the Public Services Joint Standing Committee, for which I chair. But not much agitations came out of it in the run-up to agreeing on this. Oh, yes, definitely. If the circumstances, the engagement is managed very well, you do not expect any level of agitations. You see, there's one thing that may not be known to the general public. For us, an organized labor, we have a common interest to advance this nation. Right. It's a common interest. We do not have differences. But how the distribution should be done, that's where the issue is. That is where the issue is. So when we explain our issues very well, when I say we, it's not just the government side, but also with organized labor. In fact, government would have wished that organized labor will forgive us any percentage, at least for this year. But we also understand the economic circumstances and the cost of living. Absolutely. So definitely we have to, more or less do some burden sharing for us to have some amicable settlement. So it's the goodwill we have towards each other. That's why you don't hear the news that some of you are actually looking for. But I mean, this week, for example, I was reading this report by the Ghana Statistical Service, and they come to the conclusion that if you look at the public payroll, about 80% of persons on it earn somewhere around between 2,000 and 3,000 Ghana cedis a month. And clearly, in the state of affairs in this country, 3,000 Ghana cedis a month for a lot of people is woefully inadequate. Fair wages, you come in here because your job, look at how best we can remunerate public sector workers to give off their best. When you reach such reports, what does it tell you? That we are still a work in progress, or we are paying what according to the output that we get, or there's still more that we can do to make public sector workers better? I don't know if we have the time to discuss this, but the president summarized the state of the economy by describing it as a pot that is leaking. He described it as a pot that is leaking. So anything that we are fetching to pay public sector workers is from the pot. Article 36 of our Constitution gives the principles for payment. Payment is matched to productivity. What this country does, the revenue we raise, our abilities to sustain it, is what should be one of the key guiding principles for payment. So, for example, if our GDP growth is 4%, our revenue is growing below 15%, growing below 10%, and you're asking for wages 30% and beyond, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, where are we going to raise the money to be able to pay? And we are not the only people who understand this mathematics. Organized labor also understands this, for which reason when we meet and dialogue, we are able to reach consensus. So it's not as if that living conditions are extremely too bad, for which reason the employer in this circumstance, government, is not being sensitive to the plight of public sector workers. That's not it. There's another condition. It has to be fair and realistic. And it is enshrined in our Constitution. So how realistic is the wages that we're paying? And that is one kind of balance that we need to introduce into this conversation. It's not just the fairness, it's not what the cost of living should entirely be, but how sustainable should it be for us as a country? So we are speaking to our realities as a nation. And I'm sure when we have a very sound economy, where our GDP
goes up, revenue is going up, I am sure government will be very careful to take good care of its employees. So you have to look at, I don't know if you understand mathematics very well, in every equation,
yes,
you have the left hand side of it and you have the right hand side. To the left, if I may land,
right,
to the left where we are drawing all the explanations from is the revenue, sustainability.
All right.
And to the other side is how we'll be able to look and seek the welfare of our people.
We'll look at how best we'll deal with this.
It's a balance.
I know that last year, for example, you started the process of reviewing the structure and then also the removing of names that are not supposed to be on it. But President Mahama is holding his first cabinet meeting at the Jubilee House. Let me take you live to the Jubilee House now as the spokesperson for the government explains what is at stake for cabinet, and then we'll come back to deal with the labor issues.
With the president. Now, apart from these 19 ministers, other ministers are made to attend. And so you find that the description for that would be in attendance. So the following ministers were in attendance at cabinet today. So the Minister of Sports and Recreation, the Minister of Youth Development and Empowerment, the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture, Minister for Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts, Minister of State in charge of special initiatives, and my good self, the Minister for State responsible for government communications, the Minister of State for Climate Change and Sustainability, and Minister of State Public Sector Reforms. So this essentially is the composition of those who attended cabinet today, in addition to the cabinet ministers. Now, today's session primarily was to introduce cabinet and ensure that people have a handle on what exactly the expectation is of them in cabinet. The ground rules were set out, and important briefings on matters relating to governance took place. There were a number of briefings. The first, of course, as should be expected, was a briefing on security, the state of security in the country. So the Minister for the Interior, the Minister for Defense, and the National Security Coordinator took turns to brief cabinet on the security situation in the country. And the general view emanating from the briefing was that Ghana's security was strong. We are a safe country, and people are free to go about their normal activities without let or hindrance. And whatever threats exist, our security agencies have the capacity to deal with. So Ghana was declared safe from the briefings that were made at cabinet today. The second briefing was made by the presidential advisor on the 24-hour economy and accelerated export development, Mr. Guzitano. He briefed cabinet on preparations so far towards a full rollout of the 24-hour economy. And one was left with the impression that tremendous work had gone into what is arguably President Mahama's foremost transformation plan, which aims to convert the Ghanaian economy from its present state into one that never sleeps and works around the clock. The briefing from Mr. Tano and his team shows, I beg your pardon, that we are on course to ensuring a smooth takeoff. And in due course, the 24-hour secretariat would be engaging the Ghanaian media so that through you, they can apprise the people of Ghana as to where things stand. And the president and everybody else in cabinet was highly confident that based on the roadmap that had been established, we were on course to achieving the objective of having a 24-hour economy. The final briefing was made by the minister responsible for finance. As you may be aware, we campaigned strongly on Ghana's failing economy. And indeed, our fears were borne out when the finance minister made his briefing. The situation is dire. The numbers are even worse than we had known in the period of the elections. But the minister the president and others involved in the management of the economy were confident that the proposals, the policy propositions, and the program that President Mahama has put on the table were sufficient to turn around the situation and lift the pall of economic hardship and despair that has hung over this country and its people all these years under the new Patriotic Party, where economic mismanagement and imprudent decision-making was commonplace. In a few days' time, President Mahama will be addressing Parliament. He will be delivering a message on the state of the nation to Parliament, and he will take the opportunity to delve deep into our current economic state, what we inherited, and what plans there are going forward to ensure economic revival and resuscitation. A few days after that, the National Economic Dialogue will take place from the 3rd to 4th March, and there too, various stakeholders in our economy, drawn from academia, civil society organizations, public servants, public officials, and other interested parties in the Ghanaian economy will meet to deliberate on the state of affairs, and there too, further insights will be shared on the state of the economy and how we can collectively achieve consensus on the steps that need to be taken to ensure that we get out of the situation and are on the road to rapid economic growth and development. And then on the 11th of March, the finance minister will present his first budget, which would again explain the situation and indicate what government's policies are in respect of the economy and what measures will be rolled out going forward to achieve the objective of getting us out of this economic mess. So this, in a nutshell, is what transpired in Cabinet today. I would pause here and invite questions from the media present. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I would welcome them at this stage.
The first one has to do with security. You said the briefing that His Excellency the President had some assurances that the country was safe and that everything with respect to security was, for want of a better word, top-notch. But we know the situation in Boku, the Wale enclave, is nothing to write home about. That cannot be described as we being in the safe, so to speak, space.
Well, those are isolated incidents of chieftaincy, land conflicts. And at the cabinet session today, the security chiefs were on hand to provide an update on the steps that have been taken to, as it were, bring the situation under control and ensure that they do not recur. So all that was part of the briefing. If you take out those isolated cases of conflict, which in any event predate the coming into power of this government and have been raging for decades in some instances, the general security situation is safe, and one can be confident that we can go about our activities peacefully as a people.
Do we get a sense as to what approach the government wants to have with the issue on the conflict around that area?
I think that President Mahama himself has indicated that he remains committed to resolving disputes such as the Boku conflict and others that are in various parts of the country. He has spoken about the need to use dialogue and stakeholder engagement as a tool towards achieving lasting peace in these areas, in addition to deploying security measures, deploying intelligence measures to ensure that early warning signals are picked up and they are attended to expeditiously to forestall the outbreak of violence. And where there is some outbreak of violence, we respond rapidly to bring it under control, to preserve life and property.
Okay. My question is on energy. You mentioned that the energy minister is part of cabinet. I want to find out, WAPCO announced that it was starting with its PN exercise, I think, some days ago. And we were told that fuel had been procured to make up for the shortfall that was expected. In recent times, we've heard some complaints about intermittent power supply in some parts of the country. And if you scan through social media, you get that concern as well. I want to find out if the issue of intermittent power supply, as has been suggested on social media, came up at this meeting, and what has been done to resolve the challenge, if there is any.
What I can say is that the energy minister is aware of the situation, and in the coming days he will be engaging the public on what the threats that we faced at the very onset of this government, which related to the closure of the West African gas pipeline and the failure of the previous government to meet its obligation of providing fuel for thermal power generation, was averted. Government has brought in adequate supplies of fuel, but it is important from time to time to engage the public to address concerns that they may have with the power situation. The Energy Ministry will be doing that in the coming days.
Okay, Minister, my question has to do with the CLOSAC strike. We saw the Labour Minister part of today's meeting. Is it the case that that issue didn't come up? And if indeed it came up, what was the response to that issue?
Well, what I'm aware of is that today's meeting involving the tripartite committee, at which the finance minister, the labor minister, and in fact the president were present, discussed the fixing of the minimum wage and determination of the base pay. That was the agenda of the meeting that was held this morning. As for the CLOSAC strike, I think government's position has been made clear through the briefing that I made yesterday, and I do not anticipate that it will change. Thank you very much for coming.
Right, so you've been watching live proceedings from the Jubilee House. President Mahama just had his first cabinet meeting where the composition was made known, and then some additional ministers that may not have cabinet status but are allowed to participate in cabinet meetings. Now, some of the things that went down during the first cabinet meeting, the president was briefed about the security situation in the country, and according to Felix Kwachofosu, the government spokesperson, Ghana is safe. And the security is doing everything to ensure the continued safety of the country. It was also briefed about the roadmap towards the implementation of the government 24-hour economy program by the person responsible for this, Mr. Wutitando. And according to Felix Kwachofosu, Cabinet was happy with the roadmap that is being rolled out towards the full implementation of the 24-hour economy program. And then the finance minister also updated Kamina on the state of the Ghanaian economy. Now, we've been told by President Mahama today that even though he knew that the economy was not in good stead, what he is now learning about is even more dire. And for that reason, in the coming days, at the State of the Nation address, he will lay bare the facts confronting Ghanaians as far as the management of the economy is concerned. And finally, on the 11th of March, the Finance Minister, Dr. Kesel Atufoso, will present the 2025 budget to the nation, and again will spell out some of the interventions that government is hoping to implement to resuscitate the Ghanaian economy. So these are the key matters that came up during the first cabinet session of President Mahama. We'll bring you more in subsequent bulletins on this. Mr. Benjamin Alta, CEO of Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, is still my guest here in the studio as we begin to wrap up. So before we went on that break, we were talking about the payroll. And you've been doing a lot of payroll monitoring. You started last year. You updated on how much the monitoring is helping to save the public purse. What is the latest on that?
Well, thank you very much. We started this exercise in 2023. We did it for, I think, since April 2023. We did it for the whole year. And in the first quarter of last year, we intensified it. Slow down a bit because we had to come back, do all the analysis and make sure that where we had seen the anomalies, I call them anomalies, had to be corrected. This year we want to continue with a massive engagement on that, because we believe that to save this country a lot of money. Last year, we made a lot of savings.
Like how much, for example?
Last year, it was 345 million.
From the monitoring exercise?
Yes, but you see, it has other benefits of improving on productivity and the rest. Because what we do, maybe if we have some other opportunities, we may shed light on that. We go out to collect comprehensive information, go out on the field to do some monitoring. We also monitor the payroll. Where we have had a challenge had to do with those who are managing their own payroll with their own IGF.
Like, for example, state-owned enterprises that pay their own workers.
That pay their own workers with their own internally generated funds.
Like VRA,
some of them,
ECG,
yes,
and the rest.
Come to understand that we need some policy direction to be able to curb some of the excesses. But I can tell you...
Excesses like what exactly?
When I say excesses, I continue to use this funny example where an individual was collecting vehicle maintenance allowance. We just wanted to check what type of vehicle that vehicle should be or has been. And it happened to be a tractor.
Tractor?
Yes, it was a very funny situation.
Using tractor as a saloon car?
So quickly we took the individual on and ensured that whatever the individual had received was returned. We've also had cases...
And for how long had you used tractor as a saloon car to receive allowance?
I think it was for some number of months, you know. We've had cases where people were using government accommodation. They were in government accommodation and kept on receiving rent allowance. We had to stop some of these things. We have had cases, especially with people having multiple, date of birth. Some of them were too clear that they just wanted to stay on the payroll for as long as they wish. In fact, we came across individuals who even had 4 different dates of birth.
Same person on the same public payroll.
Same person.
So I mean, what because of that he was receiving double salary or something?
No, most of these cases had double, multiple dates of birth. What it means is that if your actual date of birth will lead to your non-existing on the payroll, by you remechanizing your date of birth, that you will be there.
Meaning you prolong your retirement.
Definitely. So there were also cases of delayed communication of exited staff. One individual exits, and the time it takes to communicate the exiting of the person, for the person to be removed on the payroll, is too long to some extent that sometimes a month or so the individual has received something. We had cases where whistleblowers were helping us. So we want to intensify that because we believe that at least about 8% of what we pay in the public sector can be saved. And when we started doing the payroll monitoring, the analysis, showed that for 2023 and 2024, whilst the employment levels, the staff levels were going up, the rate of increase was dropping.
Right.
And I must commend two institutions.
The monitoring is working.
Oh yes, 2 institutions who have been very key in this exercise. The Controller and Accountant General's department has been very key, and our key ally in this internal audit agency has been very, very helpful. Going forward, the payroll monitoring has taught us a lot. Of course, we also saw some anomalies of people who were entitled to some allowances
and were not getting,
who were not receiving. Some of them didn't even know. So those ones we had to, correct. It was an avenue for people who more or less had not had their...
But in terms of what we have come to describe as ghost names, is there a number as to how many ghost names you've taken off the public payroll through the monitoring exercise?
Oh, yes, we have had instances like, but I don't have the numbers right with me here.
Is the number in the thousands?
Yes, in the thousands. When we did it for the 2 years, when you compare, because you can't save that much if there were no ghost names. But you see, we Ghanaians like the term ghost names, but they can be described variously. So we call it payroll fraud. So whether you happen to earn above what you're entitled to, we will want you to come to the real level. The reason being that if we do this exercise, those who are really entitled to what they earn will feel good. Because if somebody is not doing anything and is also receiving pay, he's on payroll, he doesn't appear at the workplace, has basically abandoned the work. Some of them might have even gone on steadily without pay, and yet they are receiving pay. You want to be able to check all this. But one key area that we have been very interested in is not just doing the payroll, but we are also interested in matching pay
productivity
to performance and productivity. And for the past 2 years, we have been working on that. Last year, God being so good, we were able to collaborate with Public Services Commission, which collaboration is still ongoing.
Mr. Atta, will you say that the payroll is so overbloated?
For me, and what we discovered, because we did only 4 regions.
Oh, out of the 16?
Yes.
Maybe 12 more to go.
We did only 4 regions.
And that saves us over 300 million.
And even for the 4 regions, we focus on 3 key areas. There are very key areas that we have not even gone there yet. So we believe that even for 4 regions with 3 key areas, we did a total of 102 institutions. But some of the institutions do not have many satellite offices across the country. So if we did it for 4 regions, and these were the dividends, obviously, if we do it for even the same 4 regions with spread to other areas, I'm sure we'll be able to do that. But because we are interested in the savings, this has been our approach. We serve notice to ask management to do their own payroll monitoring to weed out the chaff, even before we come.
We get it. But the issue here also is that, for example, what the OSP did regarding the Ghana Education Service, where some 6 people have been put before court to answer for whatever wrong they did in, bloating the public payroll, especially in the northern region, part of the Bonavo region. What you discovered, does it end there, or you make recommendations for punishment for, because this cannot be done by just one. There probably may be a syndicate somewhere that is benefiting from this.
Well, let me share some information with you here. When we started doing the payroll monitoring, our key challenge was when you find some anomaly, how do you address it? We didn't have prosecutorial powers. So what we did was that you refund the money. So we write to management. You see, you remember us and the GBC case. We will write to management and put the burden on management for management to correct same. The reason being that the individuals don't put themselves on public sector.
Right, very true.
They go through a channel. So we are not just looking at the individuals. We are looking at the individuals through the lens of their management. So when we see anomalies, our first instance is to address it to management to correct it. When after a reasonable time we find out that management has not acted, that is when we begin to trigger what we have,
Okay.
But our focus is to save for this country the necessary amount of money that we need, so that when those who are working come back to us that they want better pay, at least we should be able to find some resources to do so. But once you've hit this matter on your platform, let me take the opportunity to appeal to public sector organizations and their managers that if somebody is not deserving of what is being paid, you need to check against it. If somebody has gone on retirement and the individual is still being validated for pay, you should know that you are in the wrong, you have to correct it. There are times that people are validating people in some satellite offices that they don't see the people they are validating. Because some of the entities are large, they are scattered around the country, people have been transferred to areas, they are the validators, and yet they validate people they don't know.
Right.
So we want management to begin to address some of these concerns. Because you see, if you are not producing, but you are receiving, it's unfair.
Absolutely.
It's very, very unfair that you will be receiving pay for virtually nothing done, and those who are actually giving themselves their very best are also receiving the same pay. It's not fair. So we want to be able to address this. But the first group of people for me to address, and we'll be writing to all the public sector entities very soon, is the management bodies, for them to take the necessary action to ensure that when you are going to validate an individual for pay, you must be sure
the person
that
actually exists,
is deserving, that the person exists,
and actually working,
and actually working.
So this year, I expect that the Fair Wages, the Commission will do more in this area.
We will do more. We will do more. We are just praying that we will have the necessary
resources to go about it.
To be able to. But we are optimistic. We'll have it and do more.
Just one more question before we say goodbye. CTAC, last year, I mean, the matter, I don't know how far you've gone in resolving. There's also the laboratory, the professionals.
Okay.
What is the update on CTAC and the laboratory?
Oh, we do not have any outstanding issue with laboratory professionals. Neither do we have it with CTAC. Early this year...
Meaning everything is resolved?
Yes. Early this year, we were able to migrate the CTAC. It's not just CTAC and SENSAC.
Right.
Let me just simplify the teaching and the non-teaching staff of the colleges of education. We have successfully migrated them to the public universities payroll.
Right.
The outstanding issues has to do more with those who have qualified to be placed after the HR audit. The HR audit was done within a certain period. But each day, each week, each month,
new ones
are coming. So for those ones, we have received the data from GTEC, and we've worked on it, and I'm sure when finance works on it, it will definitely go to controller. So we are.
And I hope those people will not be affected by the government directive that certain individuals who were employed on a certain period should be taken off the public payroll.
Those ones, we do not come in. We do the management of the wage bill.
Okay.
Employment policies and the rest are in the mandate of others. But for us, we want to be sure that you have been properly
cleared.
Placed there, and that you are deserving of what you are receiving.
Okay.
That's our concern.
Mr. Benjamin, I wish you the very best for the year 2025 as we embark on this project to rate the public payroll of unwanted names. We will take a short break here. When we come back, we'll still stay on labor matters because ClockSAC, even though they've been promised 10% increments in the base and the minimum wage, they are on strike for a different reason. We'll touch base with our correspondent on how that is impacting on the work that they are expected to do when we return. We are back here on the pulse. Let's stay with some labor-related issues because some members of ClockSAC in the northern region have defied leadership directive to withdraw their services in protest of the appointment of the new birth and death register with Samuel Adumboche. Now, the workers argue that there are other pressing issues, such as the need for increments of their remuneration, which they feel leadership should rather channel their time and efforts to resolve. We will take you to the northern region shortly. But first, let me take you to the Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi, where Emmanuel Bright Kweku has been engaging some stranded clients seeking services from local government offices. He filed this report early on. We'll get the Kumasi report shortly, but here in the Greater Accra region, our checks at the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology review only national service personnel and directors who work directly with the minister were at post. Stephen Mensah has more in this report.
Local Government Staff Association of Ghana last week announced a strike action in protest of the appointment of a new birth and death registrar. This is in line with the appointment by the President Mahama. They argued that Mr. Boche is a politically exposed individual. Joint news checks in some of the ministries indicate that work has been left in the hands of the national service personnel and workers who work directly with ministers. Some of the workers we spoke to, who spoke off camera, want their leadership to focus on addressing their Tier 3 payment structure.
Talking to our members, most of them had showed their displeasure about the strike, stating the fact that appointment of an individual who does not really have any direct impact or effect on their condition of service it's irrelevant to them. And then secondly, their main agitating to this is the fact that they have pending issues before leadership, like their new salary structure, which leadership is not channeling its energy towards that effect. And also, most ClockSAC members who have attacked aggrieved ClockSAC members are already not happy with the fact that they've been deducted Tier 3. And some, in this instance, it has even landed at the court of law. And still, the issue is ongoing. So it's like the situation of most ClockSAC members right now most of them are bitter against their leadership.
I have the opinion that this could be dialogue, okay, because it's an appointment, and though it will go a long way to help us, okay, but right now as we are talking, these things wouldn't affect us anyway, but it has to start from somewhere. So we are thinking about the new salary structure and our condition of service, and secondly, the tier 3 that they are deducting. It should be an optional thing. If you feel like going into it, you can go and register so that they start deducting from source. But right now, most of us are not in favor of their the tier 3 deduction, and also we are thinking about the condition of service in the new salary structure.
Let me take you back to the Ashanti Regional Capital, where my colleague Emmanuel Bright-Kweku visited some offices and spoke to some clients who were stranded.
I can tell you that the strike is indeed happening here in the Ashanti region, and behind me is the birth and death registry in the Ashanti region, and we've had quite a number of clients come here who just came specifically for either a birth certificate or even a death certificate. But when they came, the workers here, you understand that some workers are in there, but they told them they are on strike, and so for anything they would want to do for today, it's not happening. But I have a gentleman here with me to quickly interact with him, and when he went inside, what really happened, what he came here for, his purpose. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Yeah, good afternoon.
All right, so let me find out from you. I know you, I just saw you come out from the registry. What really happened over there?
Well, actually, I went into the room, and quite unfortunate I didn't see anyone there, and I tried even opening up their doors, but it was locked too. So I found out that no one is having this.
Okay, so what did you come here for?
Well, I came here for a birth certificate, actually. Yeah, I came here for a birth certificate for the first time because I don't have a birth certificate. Yeah, so that's the motive why I actually came this morning.
Okay, what do you need it for? As if I know some people use it for traveling, but what do you need it for?
Yeah, actually, I need my birth certificate for traveling as well.
Is it urgent?
Not that urgent, but as you can see, I need it really urgent, not too urgent, but I need it.
Okay. So now that they don't know when they are coming back, what are you going to do?
Well, I think I should wait until I hear any news or any information that they've resumed working, or so that I can make it a day and come over to see I can actually make my birth certificate. Yeah.
All right. So the name is
Ebenezer Moore.
All right, sure. Thank you very much, Ebenezer, for speaking with us on Joy News. And so that's a client that came here to seek services from the birth and death registry here in the Ashanti region. I also have this motor rider, who had come here. I think he has spent quite some hours, almost an hour just here, hoping that he would seek some service. But your time now, Baha?
Oh, maybe somewhere
10 a.m. Now,
Akwatia, they serious.
Oh, okay. And since you see our birth set now by anyone, then I be.
If you far away, I buy, don't maybe see any day, because I tell you, man, I'm about an idea, I'm a decoy and so on. I knew I was saying, coming, so can I meet me solve that problem? But my son coming, so I'm afraid, they have a bar.
What do you find about?
I'm a free carrier and a buy.
In carrier? Hey, quite well.
I'm a free carrier and a buy. They have a bar. Yes, we name the reason why I'm a strike. Yes, Rab myself, I'm better to know my said a bear. Be a bit me and a birth set and a death set a year or persuade.
Did you see how bad it?
This year, money wanted a canon and they go back.
But only a birth certificate, you know, I'm on the baby.
Me honest was a media, me were Jumamu, me excavator operator. My chances been a bar, I think me can't sank for no be, but because of birth set, I didn't know. I was a local shop, but me buy a man, minim de me ye ho sisi a te besra ba se ni manu ya no kwa ye na ye wo se oye na ye so yen saka set ni ade na
Okay, all right, sure. Yeah, that's it. But you're here then?
Oh, you're from the sound.
Okay, sure. And so that's a rider who had traveled all the way from Akwatia. He tells me that he actually came here for a birth certificate because he needs it for a job he had applied for. And since they are not around, he is a bit stranded because his colleagues are now working and he actually has to find another alternative to work with. I have also this lady here. You came here for your birth certificate. What did they tell you? I saw you go inside.
Yeah, they said today they are not working because they are on strike. Yeah, that's what I told.
So do you need the certificate urgently or what do you need for?
Yeah, I need it to do my passport process because
I'm on TV. Okay.
Because I needed to do my passport process.
Okay.
Within this month and this month, I have to finish with the process.
All right, sure. All right, sure. Thank you very much for your time. And so this is the situation here in the Ashanti region. Specifically, I'm coming to you live from the Denyame area where we have the birth and death registry. And the number of clients that came here to seek services, they are unable to get any worker turned to them. Some of them had come here for birth certificates to actually work with. Some even needed for their traveling escapades. But unfortunately, that could not happen for them. And so they are hoping that the government could actually work assiduously for them to come back. Yes.
Right, so from the Ashanti region, let me take you to the Bono East region now. Anas Abe joins me from Techima. So Anas, we are hearing from Tamale that some of the workers, they went to work. They are demanding that attention should rather be paid to some other issues of concern to them rather than embark on a strike over the appointment of a registrar. What is the situation in the Bono East region? I'm hearing from Tamale that some of the workers, they went to work.
If you can hear me, the situation is, dire here. We scan across close-ups within the region, and they are making sure that this particular strike action is strictly adhered to by members of CLOSAC here in the Bono East region. Earlier this morning, when we got to the office, there were a few officers who were unaware of the strike action, so they came to the office. But the regional executives have to move in, especially at the Techman Ministerial Assembly, where they instructed the officers at that time to leave post because of the strike action. We moved to the regional coordinating council as well, and the situation isn't any different with members of CLOSAC all absent. Most of the offices locked. The few offices that are open were virtually empty. Same applies to the other areas, Kintampong, Kanza, and the other parts of the region. The instruction from the regional executives, like I said, is that all members of CLOSAC should strictly adhere to the instruction and not attend to the public today. Permits them to go back to work. And a few minutes before I joined this particular conversation, I spoke with the regional secretary who has told me that the strike action is still on. They are waiting to hear if there's any changes from their leaders in Accra before they embark on work tomorrow. So as it stands now, it's still on, and people who are visiting these offices for services are being turned away because of the absence of officers to attend to them.
Right, thank you so much, Anas Abe. To the northern region, where Martina Bugri, our correspondent, has also been engaging some members of CLOSAC who have decided that they will not embark on the strike despite the directive from their leaders, and showed up at their offices. She joins us with more. So, Martina, what exactly are they asking for?
So, some of the concerns they raised were that they have issues with salary, which they think is a welfare issue that their leadership should be looking at. They also have an issue with some deductions being done on their pension scheme, which they actually say the case is in court. And so they expect that their leadership will be looking at some things like this, which are of importance. And they also talked of the Galamsey issue that was a national issue that they needed their leadership to be part. They backed off. So if they come in when it suits the leadership and not when it is in the interest of the people or the members. And so they think that it is just the leadership who are interested in the strike, but they themselves are ready to work. And so most of the officers I visited, they were at work. I checked with the districts as well, and most of the officers, they are at work. They are telling me that they continue working. This directive is not going to affect their delivery at work. They would continue to deliver.
All right. Thank you so much, Martina, for that update from the Northern Regional Capital, Tamale. Now to the Parliament of Ghana now. And the Member of Parliament for Akwatia, Ernest Kumi, has appealed his conviction for contempt of court according to the minority leadership. The MP was convicted yesterday by Akwatia High Court for presenting himself to be sworn in as an MP despite an injunction granted against that. Now, addressing journalists in Parliament, Deputy Minority Leader Jerry Ahmed, Deputy Minority Whip Jerry Ahmed Shaibu indicated that the MP has also filed an application to stay the execution of his conviction and a bench warrant issued against him.
A contempt matter is a quasi-criminal matter, claiming that the lawyer should have filed an appearance. When somebody came to you earlier, you allowed the person to open a phone to give you details of a certain WhatsApp or a certain publication. But a lawyer comes to stand in for a client in a contempt matter. You are asking the lawyer to file an appearance in a quasi-criminal matter. Hey, Justice Senor Amedehe. At this stage, let me state further that legal steps have been taken. A notice of appeal has been filed against the ruling of the High Court at the Court of Appeal. An application for stay of execution pending appeal has also been filed at the High Court, number 3, Koforidua. Moreover, all the parties to the certiorari and prohibition application, including the judge, His Lordship Justice Emmanuel Senor Amedehe, who is the respondent to this application before the Supreme Court, have been duly served. Further legal steps would be taken, and the minority caucus in Parliament will address the Ghanaian public on the way forward.
Well, so Deputy Minority Chief Whip Jerry Shaibu is also accusing the judge of bias. He spoke at the news conference.
Ghana's democracy thrives on fairness, the rule of law, and the principles of justice. The actions taken against Honorable Ernest Kumi threaten not only his rights, but also the very foundation of our democratic processes and principles. The judicial system must not be weaponized to serve partisan interest or undermine the will of the people of Akwatia. We call on all well-meaning Ghanaians, civil society organizations, and the relevant authorities to ensure that justice prevails. The law must be applied fairly, and due process must be respected. Any attempt to subvert the democratic will of the people through judicial overreach must be resisted. Ghana's democracy is bigger than any individual or institution. It is our collective duty to safeguard it, whatever steps. When you are dealing with someone who can now be termed a biased judge and you are not too sure of what he stands to do next, you don't share your strategies out. So let's keep our weapons under under our little carpet, and then we would release them as and when.
International stories now. The European leaders were left reeling by the announcement that the United States would start to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine with Russia, but without Ukraine or European countries. For more, let's cross over to Thomas Payroll, correspondent for our partners at DW. So, Thomas, how is Europe trying to persuade Trump that it should be at the negotiation table?
The US government has specifically requested European countries to increase their defense spending and also send peacekeeping troops to Ukraine once that deal is in place. And these two elements are ones that European leaders are clearly discussing and that to a certain extent they're also willing to comply with. In fact, you've heard, for example, from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer that the UK would be willing to send peacekeeping troops, and other European leaders are also considering that. That is, however, a controversial issue. A second way in which they would maybe try to persuade Donald Trump, or at least have a better relationship with Donald Trump, is by fostering direct links with the US government. That could be, for example, through the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who has good contacts to the Trump government, or also, again, via Keir Starmer, who's got a trip planned to Washington in the coming days. So those are two ways in which European leaders would try and foster a more constructive relationship with the US government. However, it's also important to stress that one important element in all this would be for European leaders to present a united front when it comes to their positions on Ukraine, and that in the past has already proven to be somewhat difficult.
Well, more broadly, Trump has made it clear that Europe will have to look after its own security needs. Now, how are Trump's remarks being viewed in Germany and more broadly in Europe?
Well, in particular with shock, with concern, because those remarks, that idea was very clear last week at the Munich Security Conference, where US Vice President J.D. Vance actually presented in his speech a very strong criticism towards European democracies. He didn't focus, as many had expected, on defense or on Ukraine or even on Russia, but he had a very strong criticism towards what he saw as the main problem in Europe, namely European democracies themselves. And this is obviously something that has been interpreted here since then as a distancing between the United States and Europe, as a very deep crisis for the transatlantic relationship, although here it's also important to be cautious with the term crisis in the transatlantic relationship, because Canada still wants to have a very strong relationship to the European Union. So as such, there was very clear shock after that speech in Munich, but now it's basically the idea is to get back to work and see how, despite the differences with the US government, European leaders, not only in the European Union, but also, for example, through the United Kingdom, can foster a more constructive working relationship with the US administration.
So also, Germany, we know, will hold national elections at the end of the year. I don't know how preparations are going for this.
It is a very big topic indeed. Germany is one of the countries that has supported Ukraine the most after the United States. And one of the topics of discussion here is how that support should continue after the election. That's one important element. Another important element is also whether Germany would or would not send peacekeeping troops to Ukraine. That is a very controversial issue here in the country. I would, however, be careful when it comes to understanding whether Ukraine is actually an issue that people would depend their vote on, because there are other topics that are closer, let's say, to German voters, that are more important for German voters when it comes to deciding which party they would vote for. Migration is one topic. The economy, the bad state of Germany's economy is a second topic. So yes, there is a lot of discussion about Ukraine, about defense spending. There's a lot of discussion about the future of Ukraine and the transatlantic relationship. But when it comes to the issues that matter the most for voters, that voters actually decide on when it comes to that election on Sunday, there are other topics that will probably play a bigger role, in particular migration and the economy.
Thomas Payroll, thank you so much. Now, the Minority Leader, Alexander Fenyemakin, has vowed to block the presentation of the ad hoc committee report on the January 30 chaos at the Appointments Committee until the Speaker of Parliament addresses his concerns. The report was laid last week, pending formal presentation on the floor. Mr. Fenyo Markin insists any report without a size inclusion will not be accepted.
There was nothing to run away from. I mean, we've stated our position clearly on those matters, and given the opportunity, would state our position. We need a very fair, transparent system, not when people have been lined up and coached to come and tell lies, and the chairman himself is part of the crusade. We are too smart for that, but we've written. We expect Mr. Speaker to respond to us, and we take it up from there.
You don't have a response yet?
No, not yet.
But the chairman of the committee, Emmanuel Bejura, says that regardless of the position you've taken, he will still go ahead and write his report and present.
If he knows what is called due process, he wouldn't even attempt to say that. If he knows what is called due process. Attacking a minority, predetermining the matter. So it's one of the sins he's committed. Now you could go and even say that you go ahead and do your report. Do your report. We'll all be in the chamber. We'll be in the chamber. Or in the chamber will be rendered mumu. You can't be rendered mumu. We bring the report and come and tell the whole world that this is what you think. He, Bejra, morally, has he questioned himself? Has he reflected on himself as an individual? This is a man that last year in October, even when Supreme Court had pronounced on the matter of the vacant seats, he went into the chamber to sit on our seats and told the media that should we come in and attempt to take our own seat, he will beat us. We will slap them. Those were his words. We will beat them. It will be more than January 7th, 2021. That was his reference point. This is a person who is saying he's questioning somebody's morality on somebody's conduct. This is a man.
Of course, those matters, of course, will be discussed. Parliament, the presentation will be done, and then we'll see how that will unfold on the floor of Parliament. Now, it's another Thursday, and this afternoon, we're still going to have time spent with easy painting. With the rainy season fast approaching, many face the challenge of leaking roof and windows. How can you prepare before the heavy rain sets in? Maybe a full re-roof isn't an option right now, but there is a cost-effective solution to tackle the challenge. That's why we have brought in Easy Paint to introduce their unique products designed to help you stay dry, especially as we are in the dry season and the rain season set to step in shortly. Stephanie Opoku is head of sales and marketing at Easy Paint, and she is here in the studio with me. So Stephanie, we've had this like this is the third time we are meeting. I'm wondering how the reception has been so far.
It's been good. It's been good.
Question I keep getting is what the lifespan of this painting and what it can do to your roof. The lifespan of it.
Well, so once you apply it on the roof, it goes there forever. That's it. All you need is rain or maybe yourself doing some cleaning when it's dirty.
And then some are also asking, I mean, the building is already in place. There's already roofing sheet on it. Does it mean that he has to remove the entire roofing sheet and then redo it before this becomes very effective?
No. I brought some pictures to, I think they will show it up. You don't have to remove it. It doesn't matter how they are. It doesn't matter the color they are in. We'll still work with that. We'll give you the same color if you want it. Or if you want to change, we can do that for you. But whatever color it is, if like, say you see the picture on the wall, this is an old house they had to redo.
Okay.
So we had to go and scrap everything, had to do replastering.
So it's not only the roof?
It's not only the roof. The walls, the floors, wherever you think there's leakage in tanks, maybe you have flower pots in your homes that you have problems with, maybe you're flower pressing and you want something to retain your flowers in, and your pots, they keep giving you problems with leaking. You can paint it in. So this one, we scraped everything. They did replastering. The replastering picture is there. And then after the replastering, we had a virgin wall. Then we did the application on the wall. So after we do the application, we do the first coat. We wait for it to dry.
Okay.
Then we do the second coat, and that's it. You need just 2 coats for the entire building. And the nice aspect of it is it works both indoors and outdoors.
Indoors and outdoors.
Yes.
So in case you do it indoors, what will be the condition of the room? Some say that too much paint creates heat. I don't know how does address that concern.
No, this paint doesn't, with any heat. It's as warm. It's just like the room temperature. So every room that is there, you can paint it in. It doesn't have any problem.
So in case you have a house that has serious challenge, what would be your recommendation, that you paint the inside and the outside? Okay.
So you can see this picture there. This is a very beautiful house with very expensive furniture and things in. And this is, man-made fountain in the house.
In the house?
Yes.
Anytime it rains? Anytime
it rains. This is how the house looked. So we began the work from the outside. We had to do replastering and everything. Then we went inside to solve this.
And I'm interested to see the outcome of the work that was done as far as this is concerned.
So you see, this is the other side of the house. We had to do, this is how the replastering, when I say the virgin walls or the virgin surfaces, this is how they're supposed to look like.
So basically, this is like virtually redoing the house.
Redoing the house.
If the house has challenges.
Yes.
So the concrete, the cement works will be done before the painting is done. Is that
yes, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
So we do that and then we do the application.
So basically, and I can see this is the roof of the house.
This is the roof of the house.
So walk us through what is happening here.
Okay. So this is the first coat being applied. I told you that before we got to this finishing on the basket, you need to make sure that your first coating really fills the entire surface that the work has to be done. And it doesn't, necessarily have to be a house that is leaking. Right. Even if it's a new house. And to save you money, to save the building from having to repaint every 3 or 6 months, the best you can do is paint it this way.
Okay.
Make sure your first coat covers every single corner of the place you need. Leave it to be very dry. Let's say we did this and then unfortunately we had some rains.
Right.
Yes. We'll just go back.
And do it again.
No. We'll wait for it to dry. Then we do a top-up application before we do the second application.
Okay. So that's like in 3 stages.
In 3 stages. That is, if the first coating after the rainy season, it didn't dry and it's washed off then. But if the first coating really dried before the rain, we just need to wait for the rains to just go.
So this is not the case that you can just walk into your showroom, buy paint, and decide I want to do it yourself. You need professionals to help you do it for effective results.
For effective results. And if you have painters that you really trust, we can take them through the proper way of doing the application so they can do it.
But I think in this instance, you probably will need professional advice before the work itself can start.
Yes.
So, when we started this discussion, we were focused more on the roof. Now, it looks like the entire building can also go through similar exercise. And that raised the issue of cost. And that is a concern for a lot of people who've reached out to me and say that what you're talking about is exciting, but I'm worried that this may leave a hole in my account.
It wouldn't at all. And even if it leaves a hole in your account, it's worth it because you're buying a good product that's going to last you forever. So if you paint something extra to get your house in the best shape that you would want, the peace of mind to sleep, when you have guests in there, you don't have to panic when it starts raining. And you're paying something a little bit extra. I think that's good.
Again, let's talk about how you can be approached. What will be the process first, and then the location?
Okay, so we're at Tabeka Junction. We're just adjacent to the Allied Filling Station near the Peace FM, the road that links to the La Paz. Yes, you can give us a call on 0243 707696. 0243 707696. If you have any problem and you need professional help, if it's a new house, we're glad to work with you.
Of course.
If it's an old house that had problems, just like you're watching on the screens, we're there to help you. Don't worry about the money involved. We have a very flexible payment terms to go with you.
It is not a cash and carry.
No. You just do a down payment. We give you time to finish up the payment whilst we finish with your home for you.
And when you start work, how long does it take to, let's say, a house that had both the roof and then part of the house leaking? How long does it take for you to complete it and hand it over the property to the owner?
Okay, so it depends on
the kind of work you are doing.
The kind of work we are doing. If they are very minor, we have, let's say, a week to finish everything. But if it's huge, like a house we're doing somewhere, it is taking us close to 3 weeks to finish, because it's a very big house and the entire building drains.
Okay.
It's like they intentionally were trying to create problem for the owner. From the roofs to the floor, everywhere has leakage.
Okay, my final question, in this era where fraudulent people want to take advantage of good things, and before you realize somebody has designed easy on some paint and selling it to people thinking that it's going to help solve their issue, how do they know that they're dealing with the right people?
Okay, so I had this problem, I think one time I was going to get something from ShopRite. Somebody saw me and said, oh, you're the woman with the basket on TV. I paid you people, but I've never received my paint.
Wow.
And your guys haven't come. And I was like, who did you pay to? Said, oh, the number you sent on your social media. We don't sell on social media. I'm sorry, we don't sell on social media. And we only sell in the office. And if anything, the number you're sending the money to is the 0243 707696. And make sure it's Easy Paints. That is what you're saying. Make sure it's Easy Paints. Any other person that comes to you in the name of Easy Paints, I'm sorry, they're scammers, and you need to watch out for that.
7 your final words.
So we want to work with you. Don't feel shy. Don't feel bad. It doesn't matter where the house is or the, magnitude of your problems. Come to Easy Paints and let's solve all your leakage problems. And remember, with Easy Paints, no more leakage.
Of course, that's the right way to go. Get in touch with them and we'll address your leaking issues. Before we go, Ghana, let's talk about water tanks. Do you know the secret to real water storage is simple? If your tank doesn't have the tortoise on it, then it's not the correct tank. That's right, the tortoise tank. Syntex tank is a champion of water tanks. It's strong, durable, and built to handle our Ghanaian weather. Rain or shine, Syntex tank has your back. So, my people, go outside, check your tank, and if it doesn't have the tortoise on it, it is time to upgrade. Join the Syntex tank family today and enjoy water storage that is tough like a tortoise. For more inquiries, you can call 0244 335 168 or buy now and find one of our 400 agents nationwide. That's Syntex tank for you. Folks, that's our show for today. For more stories, log on to our website, myjoyonline.com. Tomorrow, same time, we shall be here with the Friday edition of The Post. Whatever you are up to in the hours ahead, I hope it's profitable. My name is Elton Brobe.